71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and this water holds an estimated 20,000 different fish species. From freshwater backwaters to the mighty blue oceans, anglers are connected by a drive to test themselves against new species, achieve new PBs, and in turn take on the largest and most aggressive fish species on Earth. For over 125 years, Platypus Fishing Lines has been at the forefront of fishing line development and manufacturing, pushing the boundaries of available materials to create cutting-edge fishing lines that help anglers achieve their dreams. From early twisted linen lines through the pioneering times of game-changing nylon monofilament and onto today's high-tech braided polyethylene, Platypus has maintained the simple goal of developing and manufacturing the world's best fishing lines right here in Australia, with the aim of keeping anglers connected to their catch. Platypus was born in 1898 when George McPherson, a Scottish rope maker by trade, saw the opportunity to make fishing line here in Australia. The Max Platypus brand became a reality, with the Platypus name selected because, much like the animal, it was good both on the land in the form of rope and on the water in the form of fishing line.
Look at that. Full 70s. I love that.
It's a ripper, that one.
That is so cool.
Good retro label ideas, huh?
It would be. I like that stuff. That's perfect.
Yeah, I wonder what the other one is, isn't it?
Yeah.
1979 giant MacBook colour.
That is awesome.
The spots probably fish pretty well still.
What's that? It's a marlin jumping. Can you see that through the light?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've found here an absolute treasure trove of platypus artwork, mock-ups, packaging designs, all the way back to the 50s and 60s. Yeah, it's some absolute gold in here. It's amazing.
And being the 125th, it's time to have a dig.
To find all this stuff, it's awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah, for someone into their old school design stuff, finding this is just absolute gold.
Yeah, I think you've got the graphic design box over there. I've found the random
Love it.
everything
Look at
boxes,
this stuff.
world records, and
It's just amazing.
oh, that looks like a secret recipe. I better hide that one. Many of the original Platypus team have made the move to tackle tactics, including a couple of the team that started with the business as line technicians and now have a combined 65 plus years of fishing line development and manufacturing experience. These guys have the knowledge and experience required to develop the recipes and control the processes that create world-leading nylon fishing lines, with the desired stretch, strength, knot strength, abrasion resistance, and other characteristics required for specific angling applications.
My name's Peter Glover. I started in the business in 1987. I think I was there about a year, went on to night shift supervisor. 1992 became production manager, and then I think around 2002 became the factory manager. In those first years, I spent a lot of the time working with probably the best in the business at that time with Don McPherson and learnt all his skills, so I was lucky in that regard.
My name's Peter as well. I joined the company in 1989, and for about 22 years I was afternoon shift supervisor, and yeah, did a lot of R&D with Don, and after that I was on day shift for about 10 years. It's always ongoing, constant striving to improve the existing products as well, you know.
It's not like pressing a button on a machine and the end product comes out. It's a very hands-on fiddly, and you've got to monitor what's going on all the time. It's as I said, very different to actually pressing a button, walk away, and the product comes out at the end. You can't do that. So especially in the early days, you had to learn. We were given a free rein on learning back then, and even waste to it. If we wanted to play around and try and make a better product, we were allowed to.
At a time when most manufacturing has moved offshore, Platypus remains an Australian-owned and operated family business, manufacturing right here in Australia.
I've enjoyed it immensely. To actually make something ourselves, made in Australia, which is difficult to come across sometimes, and actually walk into a tackle store and see you have these products where you've physically made them with your hands. It just gives you great pride every time you walk into a store and just see them there. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of pride associated with the fact that not only the long history of Platypus, but the fact that it is an iconic Australian brand, no doubt about it.
When extruding fishing line nylon monofilament, things change. The weather can affect how the line is produced, humidity, that type of thing. So, as I said, it's just a very hands-on procedure, and you've got to monitor that all the time and strive to improve it all the time too. As I said before, it gives you great pride to see an angler up there in the photos and so forth with a world record fish. Well, in a way, I didn't catch the fish, but it's our record too. So our name's not in the book, but we take it as though it is. It's our record as well. So.
There's definitely a buzz associated with seeing the passion that fishermen have, and when you hear about a record, well, that really is the icing on the cake. And,
yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's amazing how many first fish you'd be responsible for, PB fish, world record fish. Like, it is amazing.
It really surprises me. Even each year we find out how many world record catches there's been, and there is so many on Platypus. So.
Hundreds. Hundreds of answer records, hundreds of world records. And I don't know, probably just as important, hundreds of kids catching their first fish.
Yeah, well, that's right. Just to see the smile on a child's face is just great. So.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's Australian with all that history here is, just another source of pride, as we said. Yeah.
Fast forward to 2018 and an opportunity arose for Tackle Tactics to acquire the Platypus brand, maintaining the lineage as Australian-owned and operated family business, continuing to develop and manufacture fishing line here in Australia. The acquisition of the brand hinged on whether the 30+ metre monofilament extrusion line would fit across the back of Tackle Tactics' 2,000 square metre warehouse. It snuck in, and the rest is history.
The move itself went quite well. There was concern. We spoke about it when we found out the company was changing hands. I come over and spoke to Gareth in length for some time, but those concerns were gone very instantly. I could see Gareth was passionate about the business as well, very passionate. These extruders around, these monofilament extruders around on and off a truck, it frightened the hell out of me, to be quite honest. It's not as though you can duck down the road and buy a new one. But everything went very well. I think we had the line back up and running within 5 days, so yeah, went well.
Yeah.
Definitely a bit of stress associated with the unknown. Like, it's never easy moving an extruder line, things are heavy and they can fall and break, and luckily it all went smoothly. But of course, once we found out that Gareth had the right passion and philosophy, that we're used to, it was not a problem.
Nylon fishing line production is like cooking. You need to have the best ingredients possible combined into the correct recipe to create your desired finished product. It's not just about ingredients though, it's about the many processes involved that impact the finished product, and having the experience to adjust the recipe and the processes to get the best finished product. In this case, the best fishing line in the world.
And we use the best materials in the world, the best copolymers in the world, combine them with homopolymers and softening agents, etc., to make our specific recipe, and that combined with the way we manipulate it produces the end product.
As Pete said, we've got so many different products and each one is made differently. They're not all the same, and different materials are used, different processes are used, different amounts of heats, so forth. So each one is very, very different. In the early days, raw materials, it was hard to find out information about raw materials, where we had to source information from overseas. There was no Google back then. And even the resin suppliers were very secretive about who was using what material and what they were used for. So that's where the R&D really came into it in the early days.
The details of the process itself was secretive, wasn't it?
For a few years there, I remember we had chemists and so forth working at Platypus, just so we could learn the intricacies of each material. So we can control basically how much stretch is left in the product at the end product. We can control the knot strength in a product. We can control the abrasion test of a product. All with fine intricacies, different materials and that type of thing. It's surprising how much you can modify in a fishing line if you really want to.
The tensile strength, of course, and even how much it shrinks afterwards is a consideration that we have to be mindful of.
When you're dealing with nylon, nylon's an intricate product. Even when we produce a fishing line, we have to allow for a certain loss in line. Nylons absorb moisture from the air, which means you do lose a little bit of tensile directly after production, so we have to allow for that.
When Platypus celebrated 100 years, the team developed a new nylon monofilament called Super 100. With 125 years approaching, Gareth challenged the team and gave them the freedom to utilise the latest materials to create a true cutting-edge nylon monofilament for sport fishers, and Pulse Premium Mono was born.
It came together very well in the end. Gareth said, we want a new product, so luckily at this time we were able to source new materials from around the world to create these new products. So we were able to make the strongest, thinnest fishing line we could, and it came out very well, very well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's probably the best line we've ever made. Take the best material and we're able to push it to the max. And the combination of that pushing it to the max that you can only do with the best material, they complement each other, and in the end it's probably the best line we've ever made.
Oh, you know, at the end, as soon as you put it in the testing machine, you measure the line. If you've got a super thin line and it's super strong, and the knot test, and each test, it just grows. You do your tensile test, that's great. You do a knot test, that's fantastic. And you're thinking, oh, we're onto something here. And then you put it in the abrasion test machine, and then you know, we've got a good line.
And you get it to that point, it might be 95%, but then you just tweak it, and that's where more of the art form comes in. You just tweak it to get that extra couple of % out of it.
It's not all about strength. There's a lot of other properties in line where the fishermen like and want. So to come up with a super strong line, you can make a very exceptionally strong line, but you may lose other properties in that. So.
That's right, and that is that's sort of a problem that we face. Like to maximise one characteristic, you're invariably going to damage another, and it's getting that balance of all of them being good.
The Hard Armour leader range has been another exciting platypus development aimed at creating leaders that offer extreme abrasion resistance, increased overall strength and excellent knot strength, while maintaining that smooth platypus feel and handling. The pro team around the country were heavily involved in the testing process, and Hard Armour leader has rapidly become a favourite for the team and anglers around the country.
Different procedures used to create these leaders. And the abrasion test, strength and so forth on that it's a fantastic product. And to have the two different types in our range, same again, each fish is a little bit different. One likes a little bit supple, one likes it hard. So we had to create the two.
The hardness of the Hard Armour, so to focus on that specification, you know,
Yep.
And we could really pinpoint that. I think we were quite successful in that. And as Pete said, as an angler, you've got the choice of just backing that off a bit with a little more supple, you know, so it's fine-tuned.
Each one's a lot different. It comes down to how much we have to stretch that product to give it that certain feel, that certain hardness. Test procedures at the end are different as well for each size. Each size reacts a little bit differently, and as you said, from a 10 pound up to a 300 pound, they're far different lines.
There have also recently been 3 exciting new additions to the stable of braided lines, utilising the latest machinery and materials to create cutting-edge braids for anglers in Australia and around the world.
So my favourite braid out of the latest Platypus range would have to be the Pulse X4. It's a really hard wearing braid, super abrasion resistant. It's great for casting, it knots really well, and you know, if I'm chasing big fish in the salt water or big freshwater fish such as Murray cod, I know it's a braid that I can really trust.
Braiding changed so much when we came over here. Within probably 6 months, Gareth had bought all new machinery. We had a whole new braiding plant set up. We went overseas, chose brand new braiding machines, high-tech braiding machines, where we're able to change so many settings on these machines. We can change tension, we can change number of picks, that type of thing. We've got 8 carriers, we've got 9 carriers, we've got 4 carriers, we've got 16 carriers, we've got 24 carriers. It's a big thing at the moment. The braids are really going ahead. We've got different types of polyethylene fibre at the moment, different suppliers, and it's going to be very big in the future, I believe. So each one's a little bit different, and as I said, each fisher likes a different line. Your X4, for example, it's a tougher line, it's a rougher line to cut through the weed and that type of thing. Where your X8, for example, the fisher likes a nice smooth feeling to come off that reel. And then you've got your X9, which it's a more round line, which just gives it a bit of bulk. And yeah, but it's far easier now for us with this machinery to change each line to put in different properties and that type of thing, which, why the future looks good, we can make some changes. As I mentioned before, in the early days there was no Google, there was no YouTube. I think fairly much you can get on YouTube now and see basically how things are made. But back in the early days, in the 80s, that wasn't around. Don McPherson used to travel. I was lucky enough to go away with him quite a few times into different factories, go and see the resin suppliers overseas. Don had a lot of contacts back then. We were actually allowed in some fishing line factories back then to actually snoop around and see how things were done. Sometimes we snooped a little bit too far and were actually asked to leave, but that happened more times than I'd like to mention. But as I said, it was very secretive. The resin suppliers wouldn't even tell you what the resin did back then, because it was just an area that was just taking off so much. So you had to find out and do the R&D yourself, do the hard yards, find out, go back to your factory, do the R&D. There's been times you rip your hair out for days just because it's a new material. You had to learn how to use that. Pete had hair back then. So in the extrusion line itself, I haven't counted them exactly, but I'd have to take a guess. There'd be near 100 different settings that you could change and have to change at times to create each different product. 100. So there are a lot of things to learn, a hell of a lot of things to learn, and that's where our experience comes into it, I suppose. Yeah.
For example, as soon as the line exits the head of the extruder, it hits the air before it hits the water. And even that air gap, as soon as it exits is a factor, a big factor that can change everything from how the line, how steady the line is in the water, in the quench, and it can also affect how much steam you put in the steam bath, which is 2 steps down. So that relates to that, and that's why the R&D can get very complicated.
It's different to making other plastic products. You put the resin in, you press the button and go, it falls in a box. It's far different, far different.
And extrusion itself, by its very nature, is an ongoing process. Everything's moving all the time. So that brings up a whole other set of problems.
We're talking the speeds these lines are running at, some people don't realise, but they're running at 120 metres a minute at times. And here at the moment at this factory, we could have 25 fibres running. So it's the speed of the product to actually make these changes and learn how to handle each machine as well, to join these products up. Yeah, so it's just a hands-on job at times. Yeah. As the line's running through the extrusion area itself, we're always feeling the line.
Yeah.
It's running through our fingers. It's like it's running through our veins. We're just touching it.
Because some faults you can't see, but you can feel, you know, and that's part of the quality control too. We're very high on quality control. You know, we cop a bit of waste, and that waste could, you know, can vary but we will not let anything out that doesn't pass every feature of the quality control for every component.
It's a trusted Australian-made product with so much history, and it sounds simple, but it's the best there is, no doubt.
Cheers for 125 years! Fish on!
You!